George Washington today? What would George Washington think of today's culture in America 250, the celebration of the United States Republic 250 years? George Washington would be ashamed because of how we are as a country, how entangled in foreign affairs and in foreign wars that we don't need to be in. Endless war, how we are so entangled in all these endless foreign entities like the United Nations on our soil. George Washington would not be a fan of that. Now, George Washington had his flaws, and there was slavery in George Washington's time. And then George Washington would then ask about these things in our culture. Why is there this human trafficking and sex trafficking today? Why is there these forced labor in today's culture that nobody wants to talk about and have accountability in the media, in the public sphere? We don't have accountability. And that's what people really want. They want accountability. When people come into this country with immigration, we want accountability. We want assimilation in the aspect of people following our laws. George Washington was not perfect. We know that. As a George Washington biographer myself, I know that. Mount Vernon knows that George Washington was not perfect, but there were a lot more things about him that were noble, more so than recent presidents. Now, George Washington understands that a country needs to have law and order. We don't have that in today's culture. George Washington would be ashamed of these treaties and these endless lobbyists that are trying to undermine our elections, undermine us with poisonous food, with insurance that doesn't do anything for us, with not being really able to afford groceries or buy good transportation, and these endless, disgusting pornography and endless, disgusting drugs and opioids that kill our children in our culture. George Washington would be ashamed of all of that. But what are we doing? We're fighting in between the citizenry of our country. George Washington would want us to do better. There are more of us than there are of them. And that's something that George Washington would want us to know of what he did in his time and culture. Now, yes, granted, George Washington had more money and he was a very wealthy person, but he didn't just do what he did as president for him. He did it for future generations, for the posterity of our country, for our republic. Remember, George Washington understood that to have and keep a republic, you must always be aware of what your government is doing. Accountability is very important. My name is John Stuber, and I wrote this book here, POTUS 1, about the life and politics of today through the eyes of George Washington.